Welcome back, everyone, to yet another interview. And today I have here with me Tom and Spaff, the original community managers on Little Big Planet. Can you go ahead and tell us a bit about yourselves?
Oh, I don't know. Tom, you should start that. Go on.
Hi. Hello there. I'm Tom Kiss. I'm a mostly web designer. I do lots of other things, but mostly a web designer. And I worked on Little Big Planet, Media Molecule, Little Big Planet 2, I should say, building up the kind of websites and web services over a number of years. That's it in a nutshell.
I'm Spaff. When would you start Media Molecules? 2009, wasn't it? Beginning of 2009.
Yeah.
Until about 2015, 2014. I've worked in community for a long, way too long time. I live in the States now, and we still work together. Isn't that nice?
Aw, that's awesome. It's great that you guys still have this such close connection together after all these years. It's something really special. It's something you don't really see with people who necessarily work together in the past. I mean, they might still, know each other and see glimpses of each other here and there, but your guys' friendship is truly wonderful. Do you happen to know why Media Molecule's theme was pink?
Let's try and remember exactly why. First of all,
Foof.
yeah, it's like foof. Yeah,
Foof, isn't it? The color code, the hex code for. I seem to remember Alex talking about that. Foof was the color, although that's not MM pink, but.
Well, he also referred to it as bastard pink. Like it was just so incredibly pink, like almost, magenta / pink. And I think he just chose it to sort of stand out because it was just such this bright, abrasive, different color. All the games companies were very, lots of blacks and blues and, swish kind of things. And I think he just wanted to, I don't know if it was all Alex, but he certainly would talk about that color a lot. And we immediately adopted it into everything we did. We honed in on it. We were like, that color, that needs to be everywhere.
Well, I remember actually when, after the GDC announcement video, which kind of set shockwaves out into the industry, that's when I started looking up Media Molecule. And at that time, MM had that really cool Flash site that Rex had done. And the way MM presented itself was more like a kind of cool agency than a game developer per se. And it just was with Rex's animations as well. Like there's a little lab section with crazy scientists and gurgling pipes and things. For me, I used to follow like Airside. They were really cool creative agency. Forget all the names now. My brain is just. Lemon Jelly came out of Airside. Malika Farber is really cool illustrator I follow. I used to, I don't know, back in the day, there were agencies like that, and I think MM kind of echoed some of that for me personally. It was like one of the things that made it really appealing. But that had a black website, that pink on the dark background, it's super cool. That's when I started hawking the jobs page, after that GDC talk. But I don't know, well, pink. That's
love it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if Alex spoke to this a little bit, but I think they choosing the name of the company, they wanted to keep themselves open to not necessarily just making games. Very quickly, that's just what ended up happening, being a game studio. But I think, they had sort of visions of being able to do whatever creative stuff they thought. So that probably is why this website had an agency vibe to it, almost like a collective versus a studio.
Right.
Yeah, it just was very, very cool. Yeah, I think this came across as very cool. And a lot of that, I think, was kind of Rex's style as well, being super fun and what kind of vibrant.
Yeah, I could definitely see that pink coming out of Rex's brain, honestly. Like, he's good with that stuff. Bless him.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. I actually didn't know about that. That's really cool. And because the focus, right, because the focus shifted with Media Molecule a little bit, but you guys were all still going in the same direction, that would explain why you, Tom, for example, ended up changing website a few times, because the focus was shifted over time, and that's natural. That's a natural part of just building a company and also, I guess, just developing games and other things. And so it's really cool to hear about. Let's talk about what it was like for you guys. Gosh, I love this, to be community managers. What was it like back in the day? And given that you guys were the community managers for the game, where did Steve and I come in, and how? Can you tell us a little bit more about Steve and I?
Oh, God, Steve and I. I mean, I think before we get to Steve and I, we kind of have to go back into our history a little bit, if we will indulge.
Yeah,
and that Tom and I, worked together at NCSoft. Like, we met in 2005.
NCSoft
Europe.
Yeah, Korean MMO RPG company.
Yeah,
publisher.
City of Heroes, Guild Wars, lots of MMOs. And that was my first job as community manager. It's the first time I'd ever heard of there being a job that was called community manager. And I was so happy to be able to use all these nonsense skills that I'd been developing for like 10 years, making websites and stuff, to find a job there. And then we ended up getting the job at Media Molecule together as a, so we worked together for about 4 or 5 years first, and then sort of went over to Media Molecule as a pair. And really, they didn't have a community. They knew they needed a community manager. They'd launched this game, and first of all, they were about to launch a game, and they knew they needed someone, and so we applied. I remember getting. Yeah.
Well, we should rewind a little bit again, because when we were at NCSoft and they had some redundancies and layoffs, and then that was just about the time the Little Big Planet had just come out, I think. Like, we were talking about it a lot. We were hanging out and making levels, and we decided to make a website called Little Big Planetoid, which is like a fan website. And we basically did, like, I was in creative services at NCSoft, so I was like making the community, building out kind of designing and building the community websites. And Spaff, you were community manager on those games, so you were updating those websites for content, news, etc. We basically did exactly the job that we had at NCSoft, but in our spare time on Little Big Planetoid. And we filled that. We filled quite a large kind of part of the community through that, didn't we? Because we had littlebigplanetoid.com, the blog, and like we were on it just every day. We had all these Google alerts set up. We like any mention of DLC or rumors and speculation, we was like, right, post it. We used to put everything on, what is it, N4G, that News for Gamers site, and get this syndication of all the content. And we worked on kind of features on the site as well. So we had like, I think the most popular thing we did was the top 20 DLC predictions for costumes that were coming to Little Big Planet, and that kind of went a little bit viral at the time. It's quite funny to look at that list now, actually, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that actually happened, and we were like, I don't think the Slipknot one ever happened, but there were loads.
That's one of the only ones, though. Yeah,
there were loads.
Yeah, I had applied for a job, and then they had gotten back and said, "Oh, actually, we're not. We're just going to freeze hiring because we're shipping this game, and we're all freaking out." And then we lost our jobs. But we were like, well, let's use every ounce of our existing professional ability and just do this job anyway. And then maybe we could, get a job there. But also just for fun, because it was such a fun community. It was really inspiring to be part of it then. And then I went for a job interview there and told them everything. We didn't. They reached out and said, "Oh, you guys should apply for this job." And we were like, "Oh, we already did." We went up there and they explained that maybe they needed two of us, and we got in there. So they, we sort of built a community before we went there, and then sort of flipped it over to being an official one. Our start day was April 1st, so we made out it was a joke that we had gotten a job at Media Molecule for April Fool's Day. But then it was real, so it was good. We sort of built this community from scratch, and it was wonderful. It was such a good time. Where the hell did Stephen come from? I think he was just a very, very active poster on the forums, because PlayStation Europe and the US, at those times, they had forums for each game that they were putting out. And so that was one of our realms that we would hang out in. I think Stephen came from that sort of, era, and he was just always around and always in a really, really helpful sort of, if we needed any extra help, basically, he'd be the person to reach out to. He knew everybody and, would be talking to every major creator. So if we needed to get some news out or, figure things out, he was a good go-to.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really interesting to hear about all of that. It's such an endearing story, isn't it? Just to think of, how it kind of came about and how all the pieces just fell into place. It was almost magical, wasn't it? And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And before we get to LBP.me, I want to ask you a question that's kind of been on my mind for a little while, ever since we interviewed some other people like Kengo Kurimoto, who was the level designer on LVP2. Do you happen to remember what kinds of telemetry, if you were involved with this, you guys were able to collect on players? So Kengo mentioned in his interview that in Little Big Planet 1, you guys were able to see heat maps of where people died the most in levels, as well as numerical data on how long people stayed in certain levels, the pod, etc. Were you guys involved with that?
Not really. I don't have many. I mean, I know. Yeah, I remember seeing the heat maps, and I knew we had.
That was James, right? I think James built that stuff. It was really useful for those level designers, but it is something that we ended up at least trying to expose to players as well for their own levels on LBP.me. I don't know if that ever made it in.
I remember we had prototypes, but on the internal versions, I'm sure. I can't remember the specifics.
The designers use them because it's really useful to see, everybody's playing this level, they're just all dying at this one spot and aren't getting past it. So obviously it's an unbeatable section of the level. And I remember the discussions around we should give these tools. We should let people have these. Anything we're using, everyone else should have. That was the sort of, the ethos. But yeah. We didn't really build that. We just sort of, Tom would hook it up to stuff on the web as much as possible.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't expect that at all. The fact that you guys actually interacted with that stuff in the first place, that is news to me, because again, I haven't seen any of this at all. I haven't seen the heat maps or anything. It's sort of like trying to piece together in my mind, like visualize kind of what it would have been like back in those days. But let's talk about LBP.me itself. How were you guys, because I know you guys were very involved, how are you guys involved in the creation of LBP.me? What tools did you use to make it?
Well, the first version of LBP.me used, what did we use? It had a front end that was built with Haml, and God, this is so long ago. So the work I did at Media Molecule was, so we came on board, and one of the first things we did was build out littlebigplanet.com, and we built up that website, and we published all the news on there, and we kind of continued the Little Big Planet kind of online presence of littlebigplanet.com, and then through the launch of Little Big Planet 2, we updated the website for all that, we built out DLC catalog and all that, and that was a kind of a first kind of major work that we kind of did at MM. And then as we got closer to LBP2, we had kind of this, loads of ambitions for getting all that site game data out onto the web. And not forgetting Sackbook, which was a website that was produced by, I'm not going to remember any of his names. Sackbook was the guy that was intercepting data on his PlayStation and then duplicating it and publishing it to the web. And got a lot of attention and respect from like Alex and others in the company, and I think MM had a dialogue with him and was talking to him about that, because I think he kind of had to be shut down. Like, I can't remember because it was all a bit.
Not by us.
No, not by us. Anyway, so that all happened, and then LBP.me was built out during development of the game of LBP2, and we kind of had an internal version working, and I kind of worked on all the front end design and templates, and I guess some of the functionality as well. So I think, what do we have on there?
I think it's important to say that LBP.me was fulfilling this need. Like I was community, Tom was, community web stuff, but we had this thing called a share team, play, create, share. That's what Little Big Planet's all about, right? So internally, we kind of had the teams based around those, words as well. And the share team was the two of us plus Jim and James. And a lot of the stuff we would discuss was that, oh my God, there's 1 million levels, there's 2 million levels, there's so many levels. How can we get better discoverability of all of these things? We've got the very basic set of review stuff, which we overhauled for LBP2. It's like, rate this level 5 stars, or is it good or bad, that kind of thing. And it wasn't good enough for being able to find something you actually wanted to play. And then even then, when we built this thing, we had, what Alex would refer to as a walled garden. All the data was locked away inside a PlayStation. And, it came with its own sort of complications when you're talking about how best to discover stuff and share it with other people and get people, if I've made something, I want you to play it. How can I tell you about it? It's, a frustrating experience for me to tell you what my level's called and how to find it and how could we make that better. And LBP.me was sort of born from that and the Sackbook stuff, right? Like getting it out onto the web, but also the URL is that short for a reason. It's so that we could make QR codes that were of people's levels, right? So every level could have a short URL that went straight to it. And we could generate a QR code, which, the longer the URL, the more complicated those are, especially back then, I'm sure. Not that anybody could read QR codes. It's important to note that back then,
right,
they were a weird, nerdy thing that we were like, we should put QR codes. No one knows what these are.
Well, we printed Moo cards, like little, very long rectangular Moo cards with little QR codes on the levels. And I had some. Oh yeah, nice.
I've got a Moo card here.
Oh yeah. Oh.
It's got Mim on it.
Oh. Ooh, there it is. Media Molecule. Nice. No way.
So I just found that earlier.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I figured that's why it was so short. Because of like URL shortening being so prevalent back then because of the whole QR code thing. I was caught up with that. Not back in the day, but gosh, it's crazy to say back in the day, but now just looking back on the technology back then. And so I want to know, like, LBP.me was very special to a lot of people, and so was LBP to me and many others in the community, but eventually it ended up getting shut down. How did you guys feel about it being shut down? LBP.me specifically.
When did that even happen?
Wasn't that like 2 or 3 years ago now? I can't remember. But I remember hearing about it when it happened. When was it?
I thought it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Was it? Okay.
2020.
After our time, though, I mean, it's sort of connected in with all of the servers being shut down. It's a huge tragedy and an immense loss,
I think
it makes sense, but sad.
Yeah, it's sad. Whenever a website goes offline, it is sad because there's very rarely a kind of digital legacy or archival plan for those kinds of projects, especially if they're thought of as commercial, and there's no commercial benefit to preserving these kind of huge digital archives, which is why Wayback Machine and the Internet Archive and groups like that are so important. But it's difficult because it is a long time ago, and it is, a lot's happened since then. Kind of move on as an individual, but you kind of still have a connection to these projects, and hearing it was offline it is sad. I just wish there was some kind of a archival plan in place for that, but realistically, that doesn't happen very often.
It does speak to, like, I think, Tom and I have worked on a lot of websites over the years. We've worked together for 20 years, basically, in 3 different jobs. And, still to this day, now we're at Double Fine, and Double Fine has long been, such an important place to me. And I was a huge fan, since the early days. And, working on, basically, Tom, I came over here and started Double Fine, and years later managed to get Tom to come and join as well. And, one of the biggest reasons of that was I wanted to make a new Double Fine website that preserved the past, that managed to keep everything about it intact as much as possible, and, bring it into the future, because all that old content was so, special to me, in the same way that I'm sure a lot of this Little Big Planet content is special to you and the community. I was part of that community. And so being able to be in charge of its future is really special. And we've managed to do that, the doublefine.com. If you go on the news, you can go all the way back to like the year 2000, and it doesn't always work exactly how it used to. The images are a bit broken sometimes, but the content is there, and we get to keep it alive, and that feels great because so much is lost of the other stuff we've worked on.
I want to know a little bit more about LBP.me. What was one thing you guys would have maybe improved about LBP.me, if anything?
Oh God.
What?
What do you think?
Well, there was a time when we kind of, as Media Molecule moved on, and we kind of handed over certain projects. LBP was .me was one of them, and I think that was around the time that Little Big Karting was coming out. That we wanted to integrate Little Big Karting onto the onto LBP.me, and LBP3 was obviously coming, and so it was all moving over to Sumo. But yeah, the last thing I had kind of pitched, I think, was there was talk of a mobile app for the website for LBP.me, and I did a little simple pitch for how the site should be responsive on mobile and work on mobile phone, basically. That was the last kind of bit of work that I guess I would have liked to have done that, because the site wasn't mobile friendly, and back then smartphones, most websites still weren't designed with a mobile first approach, so it wasn't something that we did when we fleshed out the site initially. But yeah, I would have liked to have kind of completed that and rounded off the kind of mobile experience for the website.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Although I will mention the thing that one of the things I was most pleased with the website was the playlist functionality that we'd added. That was something that we got to do on the website. I can't even remember if that's in the game, but that was the website first, right? I can't remember. Yeah,
definitely that, and the Play Now button, which was a lot of work to be able to get. It felt like absolute magic to be able to like browse something on your your phone, which at the time was sort of also quite a magic device that was relatively new, and just be able to like build this playlist. And then if you're logged in there and you're logged in on your PlayStation, hit that Play Now button and just like make something on your PlayStation load. I don't know that I've seen that functionality being used for anything ever again. Do you know what I mean? Like, that felt like magic. I'm glad we got that working.
Yeah, it was a killer feature. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Sometimes I wish I was there with all the experience I have now. I wish I was there back in the day with you guys, seeing all that. It just would have been magical. To see that unfold, like, oh, we got this feature working, because I know how that feels when you finally get it. And it's like, oh, this feature, it's so polished, it works well. It's I'm a nerd for that stuff.
It's so cool because, like, a lot of the designers, the artists, they get to see their work on the PlayStation, but as a web team, community team, our stuff doesn't necessarily make it into the game. But working on a feature like that, just that had that extra bit of magic, I think, for us to be able to work with James and Jim on that stuff. So cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
We would have loved to have you around too. There was a lot of us hacking random stuff together and trying to figure things out, like how to, with just the two of us, how to implement 26 languages into littlebigplanet.com with like 10,000 words per language or whatever, and trying to build scripts to like haul all of it in and, allow us to edit it. And it was crazy.
Do you guys remember, it might make you shudder, I don't know if you were involved with this, LAMs. Do you remember LAMs at all?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And that's what we were pulling from, right? For the web, we normally the web stuff wouldn't be connected to the actual database like that for translating, but we made the decision to use that so that we could translate the website more effectively. Otherwise, I don't know how the hell we would have achieved that.
But LBP.me used LAMs. But I think LittleBigPlanet.com, at least the earlier iterations, we had some We had that horrible spreadsheet that would just get. There's a little script that would run and it would just churn out all these files that the website would consume. The localization was on littlebigplanet.com was, I don't know, it was the first time I'd worked on a web project that had that many languages. So it was there was a lot of, there was a lot. There was no.
We got that message one time from JP that just said, Ireland has disappeared, and we were like,
Ireland just disappeared.
Ireland just
all caps subject line. Yeah, and I think on the staging server, the icon for Ireland wasn't there, and I thought it was someone in marketing actually, but it just it was like a totally panicked email about Ireland disappearing, and then followed up by, oh no, it's fine, it's there actually. Anyway.
Oh goodness. Well, let's get into, because I'm sure you guys are antsy for this, the Little Big Planet community itself. What was something you guys saw trending all the time in the community that you can remember? For example, the Angry Birds Bomb Survivals, Skateboard Extreme, and Shark Survival levels that were being pushed out like crazy.
We were the
definitely
days
the survivals.
Ramp. We were the days of Ramp, right? That was the first.
Oh yeah, the first ones that were like get 100 achievements in 30 seconds, that kind of thing. So you just like get on a skateboard and it would like send you off on a journey and collect 1 million bubbles and do all these things and get you all these achievements. That was funny. Definitely Shark Survival. I don't know how many Shark Survival levels I've played, but quite a lot. They're all good. Ish. Other trends were there. I mean, as soon as people figured out the 50-layer glitch, that was, a pretty big a trend for those who could get it working, like Big Guns and those folks. That was amazing.
Yeah. What were some of the most notable creators, including Steve Big Guns, that you remember back in the day?
I mean, one of the first most notable creators was John Beach. Johnny. I mean, there were so many, right? But he was so good that he was just immediately hired. Just plucked out. And I remember sending him a message saying, "Hello, can you come and hang out with us, please? We think your levels are really good." And he showed up in a suit that I think he bought for the occasion because he was a builder and construction worker kind of guy. But his stuff was just phenomenal. Like, we'd all be sitting there just wondering how on earth some of it was made, and just the level of detail and finesse. Do you remember anyone else, Tom?
Oh man, I must admit my memory is super hazy. We quite often have kind of moments in the office where we kind of be reviewing some of the community levels. I remember I remember in the newer office that happening with LBP2. Just crowding around to see like the latest creation. But we had some really nice meetups.
Definitely.
When Little Big Planet PSP launched, I remember there was quite a big meetup in London with different people. Maybe it's like EG, Eurogamer Expo, I think, one time.
Yeah.
And getting to meet people was always really good, putting a face to a name. I know a lot of those folks went on to Sumo, like Jack and
for MC and
James.
Richard, RTM, whatever it was, some numbers after that. I just started, you start remembering them as their real names after a while, because there's so many people that did end up in games development, a lot of them directly through Little Big Planet. But, I remember an early MM pick of a level that was just so clever. It involved you like moving the portals around and then killing yourself, and so you could spawn. Like the door would be further than you are, and then you have to kill yourself, and then you spawn further on. Rinse and repeat. And that was by a creator. His name is Jeppe Carlsen, and he went on to be the lead designer or lead puzzle designer for Limbo and Inside. And then he's made his own games recently. Cocoon was out like last year, the year before, winning a ton of awards. And his puzzle design mind is just so amazing. So yeah, tons of really good people. And of course the big guns. I mean, always call in the big guns.
Yeah. A little tidbit for you. Me and Steve are quite close now, so we play Elden Ring every weekend and have a good time hanging out, fighting bosses and stuff.
Nice.
I'm a tool developer in the community, so I make tools for artists so they can mod the game and do all that. But
That's awesome.
Yeah, about the community, and this is what my Prezi at the end has to deal with, by the way, a little bit. Were you guys aware that a user by the name of Imataka got to 200,000 hearts before the shutdown, being the first and last person ever to have the most hearts in the game? What are your thoughts on this?
200,000.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that's just immense. I don't think anybody ever thought anybody would get close to that many hearts. Like it wouldn't be possible. Enough time, enough people, enough creativity.
Right.
So do you have the record of that then? Like from...
Yes.
Do you have? Yeah. Right. Okay.
Very cool.
That's.
It reminds me, Tom, of when we made that giant poster for. I don't remember how many million levels it was.
It was 1 million.
Was it the first million?
Yeah.
And we went through and found all these stats of like how far Sackboy had run. If you put all the levels end to end, they wrap around the moon however many times. All these kinds of things. 7 million some.
Was it 7 million?
Yeah.
I thought Yeah. Okay.
Later. But it's got all these incredible stats on it. Community stats and MM stats as well. Like it's in here: 14 weddings and 11 babies. 21 years, the amount of time it would take Sackboy to run through all community levels. 5,000 levels uploaded every day, which was 200 an hour. Just bonkers, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah, no, it's crazy to think about it. When you were managing the community for Little Big Planet 1, especially at the beginning, did you have any levels where maybe you guys weren't sure if it was okay, so maybe you sent it off to Sony for Kyle and everyone else to review just to make sure? Was there anything involved with that with Sony?
I mean, I don't remember it that way around. At some point, this might have been for Little Big Planet 2, the Sony moderation teams would be working around the clock to, they had things that would detect certain themes or words or whatever, and they would be taking down the worst offenders. But, I think there's stuff that's offensive, and then there's stuff that's, got a lot of willies dangling around in it, and it's not, you're not going to give it an MM pick, but it's definitely going to make everyone laugh at the studio, and there's no reason to, to take it down. But yeah, I don't know. So much creativity and very hard to police in that sense of the word.
Right.
But this is the thing. The community was so sort of creative, and I think the tone of the game was so it was about sharing and community and, being peaceful and happy. And I think it just sort of made people not want to destroy that, largely anyway. It made people want to sort of work together and make things nice and keep the spirit alive. And I definitely think that helped a lot. As the tone that we would set as well with communications and anything we were making or putting out. trying to keep people together. We made another website that was, what was it, Tom? What was it called? It was all the fan sites. It basically went back to the early days of the web. There was something called Webberings, and this is in the 90s. A Webbering was like, if I had a site about a certain topic, say it's about Little Big Planet, then I can join this web ring and I put this little thing on my website and it just says, previous and next. And it just goes to the next site in the ring. So it just, you can go around all the sites. And we sort of brought back that as a silly idea.
It was littlebigfans.com.
There you go.
Yeah.
A big list of every fan site on one page. But instead of making it a ring, we made it random so that it was more fair. Couldn't favour anybody. But we encouraged fans not to compete, but to collaborate. And I think that helps when we're just stopping people wanting to make, fucked up shit, basically.
Copied levels, because they had to deal with that. What are your thoughts on the copy level feature itself? Do you think it was helpful or damaging to the community?
What do you think, Tom? Do you remember all that?
Yeah, just stuff? About. I don't know, without getting into it too much, because I kind of think overall, generally, it was a good thing, but I think there's a lot more to be had in that discussion. It's not.
I think it was something that was more honed for Dreams, right? Like Dreams, it's like an Alex Evans dream of his, right? That you could copy and remix something or see how it was built, and that's the idea behind it. And Dreams got way more into that and maybe had better things in place to make sure credit was given, and not quite so, ripped off. I don't remember it being too much of a problem, but I guess I never had my level copied and stolen. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair. Back when, let's talk about OBP2's community a little bit. How does it feel for you guys to know that Little Big Planet 2's community was influenced a lot by the trends going on YouTube, to the point where people would remake entire memes in the game? For example, Tickle Me Elmo, I'm Sexy and I Know It, PewDiePie, Jacksepticeye, Harlem Shake, and the TikTok song by Kesha. You guys remember any of that?
Yeah, there are a lot of memes and things from the world into the game. Even the events as well, like political events that would get echoed in the game. It was always interesting to see what kind of got picked up. Yeah,
we were part of that too. That's what that was exactly the kind of thing that we were into, and that's what made us a good community web team, I suppose. Is that at the time we loved the internet and everything that it was creating and building. It's harder to say that these days, but we would participate in many a dumb meme. I remember us putting our head in a fridge. I remember us doing planking. Like at officially doing these things.
That's on the Flickr feed, isn't it? They're putting your head in the fridge.
Don't even remember what that was.
Me neither.
Yeah,
but it was amazing to see that stuff created in the game, like the creativity that people would, deploy just for some silly reference or something was sometimes mind blowing. Right.
Speaking of stuff at Media Molecule, if you're able to share, what kinds of shenanigans do you remember going on in the MM office at the studio? Anything funny, hilarious you can just remember?
That's a funny question.
I remember we put a webcam in the fridge and made it take a picture of you every time you open the fridge, and then we had a feed of that going.
Yeah, fridge cam. Yeah, well, that was on the intranet. That was on the intranet because one of the things I built at MM was a little company intranet webpage, which is like internal resources and whatnot, and we decided to put a webcam in the fridge. But it did rightfully get switched off because it wasn't an appropriate height for the ladies. So it rightfully got shut down. But there was a little archive of pics on the intranet with the best of pics. There was some shenanigan events being posed for in front of the camera by different people.
Do you remember the Coronas in the fridge? Do you remember those? The Coronas in the fridge?
I remember drinking them.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a fun thing that happened once that I don't know was talked about a lot, is that we were inspired by something that we do at Double Fine now called Amnesia Fortnight, where you basically do a game jam for 2 weeks, and it helps us occasionally come up with prototypes that become real games. Sort of inspired by that, and by, I think the teams were about to start working on Dreams, maybe, or certainly something new. And so we decided to have this little internal creative game jam session. And the first day of it was more of an icebreaker day. And Kareem put all the tables together and just got this enormous roll of paper. And then we all just made this huge collage. You had all these magazines and pens, and remember that, Tom? This giant collage. And then we played a game where you were all given, I went down to the charity shop and bought loads of board games. And then everybody got a bit. So Tom might have the spinny thing from Twister. I might have the cash from Monopoly. And then we get put in groups and then come up with a new game based on the weird things you have. The best one of which was Guess Who, the people of Guess Who on a ping pong table and poker chips. And you had to sort of throw them across the ping pong table and knock down as many of the Guess Who tiles as possible. I think that was John Beach and Jim, maybe. I can't remember now. But there was all kinds of nonsense like that. Oh, and Alex Evans made a karting game that used everyone's computers in the office. So you would, it was a LAN thing. You all ran the client. Could be 20 computers in the office. And it gives you your version of WASD. So there might be, DXCV or something like that would be your controls. And when you would drive through these portals. You would drive out of your computer and onto someone else's. So you'd be at your desk driving, and then you'd drive onto Alex's computer. Where the hell, Alex? And you'd run over to where Alex's desk was, and then you'd carry on the race there. But there might be 4 other people already on that one. Just went around all the computers. It was absolutely bonkers.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Oh wow. Yeah, I bet there were a lot of good stories, and the ones you just shared are fantastic ones. About your guys' profiles in the game, what would you say were your favorite pins? How did you get pins for your birthdays but not everyone else? Who decided that, and why only you guys and a few others? I think one of them is called Spaff's Appreciation Day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, Spaff Appreciation Day. Where did that start?
I think that was a community-driven thing. And the community, I don't know who exactly, but they just started to appreciate, me and Tom. But it was very sweet, really, very sweet. But everybody would make all these levels of stupid pictures of my face in, and I think it just got. It's one of those things that starts as a community thing and just gets absorbed into the game when you need to make trophies or achievements or whatever you call them. Sometimes I don't know, what should we make these for? And so, or you're looking for dates. I think that was just one of them that got in there. Did I have one for my birthday? I don't remember that. I definitely remember the Appreciation Day. It was B. coli. Brian. he still messages me every year on Spap Appreciation Day. Shout out B. Coli.
What is that day again? I'm curious. What's that day again?
It's in September. I'd have to look it up. I think it's in September.
Oh, I'm going to mark that on my calendar so I remember. Message both of you. Why not?
Yeah.
The LBP, is it sign in to lbp.me on my birthday and you get a pin? Is that the one?
Oh yeah, that's probably why, right? Because it was lbp.me related.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was is it Danny that did all the pins? That was Danny's design, I think. I think so. Yeah, Danny was fleshed out on that pin design, and with
Daniel.
Daniel. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes.
10 years of being called Danny. Daniel said, "I don't like being called Danny. I've never liked being called Danny." I'm like, why didn't you say something 10 years ago? Bless him.
Oh, dear.
We had pins in all the different categories of play, create, and share, right? And some for the site.
Yeah. Do you know who awarded pins?
Well, it was Daniel's design. Like, how do you mean award?
So certain like developer pins, for example, that people got in the game that they couldn't get through normal means.
How did those work? It probably would have been through some like medieval means, like asking James to like look on a big database and just like mark it in some way. We never had a good tool for it.
Didn't we have a tool?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because all the other things were given out as codes rather than like crowns and stuff.
Yeah, like that was your kind of first big. Once people knew you had crowns, that was it. Like, every event we went there with crown codes, right, and gave them out at the physical events, and people met up. That was nice. They were printed on the little Moo cards as well. It'd be like, "Hey, I have a crown." Remember?
Yeah.
The PSN codes on that.
People still ask me for crowns.
And we actually, I remember we hid codes as HTML comments on lbp.me.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the when lbp.me had a beta trial. So we had a little test for the site early on. I think that was one of the challenges to find the codes. We had certain challenges. We had a little character called Hedgie as well on the site. Do you remember Hedgie? Little hedgehog.
I remember the tag, and I remember the handbag. Handbag.
On MediaMolecule.com, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, we had a couple of codes for costumes sprinkled throughout lbp.me, and I think LittleBigPlanet.com as well, because like a year or so after we launched the website, we finally got an email because it had a comment in the HTML that said, "If you're reading this, please email this address. Congratulations, you've won a prize," kind of thing. And yeah, years later, we got an email for the last one that was hidden away on the website. But I don't know why we did that. It's a bit mean.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember anything? You might not have been around for this, but there was a time when people started abusing the crowns, and people were able to find out ways to get crowns through kind of like unconventional means. And I remember someone made the decision, I think this was later on with Steve and I, maybe, where they blacklisted names in the game. They hard-coded certain profiles into the like compiled code of the game. How do you guys feel about that? That people would do such a thing?
Yeah, that's cheeky. That's just, that's immoral, isn't it? How dare you mess with the fabric of society? I remember something about that happening where you could get a crown or any DLC item, but you couldn't use it outside of
DLC editors
created or something like that. Or so you could sort of pretend you had it, but it wasn't. It wasn't the real deal.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on those DLC editors? Did you guys ever play them for fun?
I don't think so. I mean, all of the things the community make, we would have messed around with or had a look at, and determined if it was something that we needed to destroy or not. Largely not. Like 50-year-old glitch, for example. That was a bug that was left because it was awesome and nobody could get it to work anyway. Like, you had to really know what you were doing to get it to work. So it wasn't something someone accidentally would do and ruin their experience. So we just figured, let's leave that one. It's too fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys remember the trophy levels back in the day where people would make levels? Yeah, you play them to get trophies. What were your thoughts on those?
It just made us laugh, really, because I don't think that trophies ever meant that much to us. Do you know what I mean? Like, people love them and some people don't care about them. But being able to get 1 million of them in an hour, what is it? It's like get 100 trophies in 30 seconds, It's just funny.
Yeah, like the community, it's interesting, like you kind of watching the community grow and evolve over time and like exploiting every possible corner of possibility over time was always quite interesting. Like those sorts of levels, to me personally, I didn't, I suppose I got much out of them, but they're just a kind of a symbol really of like the infinite kind of possibilities. And it's like kind of it's like filling something up with liquid and watching it kind of seep out into every possible corner that it can explore. Yeah. That's what the community was like, and always kept us kind of surprised with what they would do next. That was what made the role really exciting. And one of the things that was really enjoyable about it, seeing, the creative power of all these minds out there and what they can come up with. Yeah, that's LPP.
H4H. That was the other way. Heart for heart. That was another trend. There we are. We adopted that into stuff. It became part of the lingo. We just would mention it every now and again, and people go, "Oh, they know about us." Of course we do.
How did you guys feel about the whole H4H thing? People flooding the community with blank levels, just tons of trash levels, stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's partially why we wanted to work so hard to overhaul the discoverability and make sure people could find quality content over something like that. We didn't want someone to come on and play the game for an hour and only encounter that kind of level. And so it's just sort of you learn from the community what folks are doing, what they're building, and then react to it, as best you can. Sometimes it means adopting it and laughing about it, and sometimes it means trying to counter it with something that's better, or, providing tools that, can help people. Because there's nothing wrong with those levels. People can make anything they like. But if it's getting in the way of, the more fun stuff.
Right.
Then,
right. Yeah. And I mean, there were trends. I want to know your guys' thoughts on this. There were trends that didn't involve completely, desecrating the community, where there was kind of this whole emo trend that started on Little Big Planet 1 with the Hero Hair DLC, and from there it sparked this movement in the community where people would use shark teeth as hair if they didn't have the... Gosh, I'm laughing about it so much because it's so funny. If they didn't have the DLC, and it made this whole culture around Little Big Planet the stepping stone to other trends that lasted many years. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I remember that Hero Hair. I remember everybody going nuts for it. There were certain pieces of DLC People would just really need, like the hair from one thing or the vest from another. So people were obsessed with making Deadpool costumes. And I remember not knowing who on earth Deadpool was. That's the first time I ever heard of Deadpool, was through so many Little Big Planet levels. And I don't know, was there ever an official Deadpool costume? I don't know, but people made really good ones from various other, pieces.
Yeah, the whole host of Marvel costumes came out, but I don't remember Deadpool in it. But yeah. That was one of the great things about Sackboy, was the customization, and it was just so fun. Like, as a character, it's so adorable, and all those costumes were just cute, like adorable, and that's, I don't know, it's one of the biggest, most popular parts of the game in a way, the customization and popularity of Sackboy. And that DLC, all the DLC costumes that came out, there's hundreds, right? And I remember, actually, my partner Naomi Summerscale, she was a video editor. She worked on a lot of the really early trailers for Little Big Planet when she was working in Sony Liverpool, and was an artist on LWP2 as well. And we have, that's one of the reasons I have a kind of fondness for Media Molecule and Little Big Planet, is because it's actually my kind of in my personal life. I've got a whole family now, which wouldn't have happened if I hadn't met Naomi. But we were chatting the other day, and she was talking about the Metal Gear Solid pack, when the DLC pack, when that came out. That was like the first really big DLC pack that came out, and that was it was so cool at the time. But she was telling me the story of when I think it was Anton, they were talking about putting guns in the game for Metal Gear Solid, and Anton, who had young children at the time, kind of really kind of spoke quite strongly about the need to not have guns in the game, and that helped the conversation move towards the Paintinator and that being born, which I think is just so LBP. It's just absolutely perfect. That gun, the little paint gun, was so cute and perfect for the game and fitted in with it. And that's one of the, that's, again, it goes back to the cozy feeling of LBP and how it made you feel. It's just, it really evokes fun at all opportune, every moment, basically. I think one of my favorite things overall is just hitting someone in the face with a saucepan. Remember that? When you put on the saucepan, you flick the thing next to someone, and it just slaps them with the saucepan.
Right.
Pick and Bob vibe.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's part of, like, those cute elements are what make LVP. Like, I don't know if you guys knew, the Poppet was named the Poppet because if you look up the word Poppet, it means darling, right? I mean, it's very endearing. That's Johnny Hopper came up with the name for it. And then Mark's like, let's rename it to Pop It, like Pop It Out. So it had two different spellings. It was 3 P's and an E, and then 2 P's and an I. And that's where that name change came from. And so yeah, Little Big Planet, but also Media Molecule, especially, like, there was just this essence to the studio where everyone is just going in the same direction, and no matter how rough around the edges things got, everyone pulled through and were able to finally kind of settle and agree on things. And one of the biggest events that happened back in the day was the Sackies. I want to know, how were the Sackies for you guys? Can you tell us a bit about it that happened during your time at Media Molecule?
God, Sackies, that's something that we just sort of created, isn't it? We thought we needed some awards. Who made the trophy image? Was that you, Tom?
Yeah, we did. We had LBP.me integration, so you could. There were long time ago, but yeah, there were different categories. There were categories for the awards, and you could go on LBP.me, and we had a little banner that appeared during the voting phase, and for some of those award categories, you could vote for levels. We did it through the website, and then if you had won an award, was there badges on the site? Oh man, it's too long ago. But yeah, I don't know if LBP.me integration was with the first one, but we did the second or one of the subsequent years. But the Saki was a great concept, I think.
I think it was born out of like the way we did approach the community, or I would think about it a lot as like a microcosm of the games industry. You know, it basically is. It's like people making and publishing games. And so what tools or events or things do we have in the games industry that we could apply to, you know, to these people? You know, what can we, you know, how can we spruce this community up? And that definitely came sort of from that. Like, there should be awards. People should vote on their favorite things. You know, this is the best of the best. I think a lot of the winners of the Sakis ended up getting jobs at Media Molecule, or, you know, Sumo, or Tarsier, or, you know, whatever, working on LBP. That's how I feel anyway. might be misremembering that, but makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And of course, when these competitions happened, right, of course, we wanted to kind of broadcast and share this. And one of the biggest ways that you guys did this was through the official Little Big Planet YouTube channel. And I kind of want to know, was the official channel ever really used that much? And are the UK and EU channels official?
Oh, God. I mean, so the thing to remember about YouTube is it was actually pretty new, like around the time we started at MM, where, you know, there wasn't really a good place to put videos. I think we had some stuff on Vimeo, but we'd be kicked off it because we weren't allowed to put commercial stuff on there. And so we started using this wacky new thing called YouTube a bit more. And so, yeah, I think MM had an official YouTube, right? Didn't know, because we would put nonsense on there all the time.
Yeah, MM did. And then we'd always set up, you know, social media accounts for all the projects or whatever. And yeah, we had Little Big Planet. But then I think over time, as PlayStation developed their kind of presence there, they'd always want to, you know, channel people through their the official PlayStation channel. So I don't think over time, I think it kind of became less required. But
I mean,
but yeah, I don't know.
EU and a US one, that's born out of PlayStation America and PlayStation Europe just always wanting to do their own thing and sometimes going in completely different directions, or sometimes going in the same direction and doing the same exact thing. And you're like, why don't you just work together, guys? But they always wanted to have their own sort of things happening. We had EU and US forums, EU and US box art, you know, different stuff for different people. When Tom and I were obsessed with just, well, everybody should just be together in one thing. Like, there shouldn't be borders inside Little Big Planet. That's ridiculous, you know, or inside the community. So,
yeah,
yes, they probably were official, but, you know, run by different people miles away from each other.
Right. Well, it's even funnier because we have more subs than them, and we're not. Well, I guess we're official now that we have tons of devs interviews on the channel. So, you know, but going back to Little Big Planet 1, I want to know, because this was pretty big, but I don't know if a lot of people used it. What are your guys' opinions on the Info Moon? Do you think it was pretty useful or not really necessary?
Info Moon. The fact that I can barely remember what it did maybe speaks a little bit about how useful it was.
What was What was the fridge? What was the
Info
was the
fridge?
fridge? Info fridge.
I think, right? What was it?
Was that in the game? Like the info fridge?
So the info fridge was the early iteration of the info moon, and then it got changed to the info moon.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But the fridge was fun.
Space. What did the info moon even do? Remind me.
So you could check, like you could get some of the latest Little Big Planet news on it. You had control over like your profile metadata and kind of like how you presented yourself on the game. Like in LBP2, you didn't have the info moon. You just had my profile and stuff like that. And then the info moon is where you got the news. And then in LBP2, the news kind of popped up with little blurbs in the game when you were looking at the main pod UI, like, oh, this level, is really popular. Check it out, or did you know? Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I can't speak 100% about why it got changed like that, but it sounds to me like hiding news behind somewhere that you have to go and check isn't actually the best way of delivering it necessarily, and you should probably just deliver it to where people are hanging out more. And also, we might have figured out some kind of web integration for the news by then, whereas before it was probably some horrendous, hard-coded news bulletin or something weird that was hard to use.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It was quite a long time ago, especially because of the fact that 2 and 3 just never had it. It was exclusively an LBP1 thing. Let's go back to the community a little bit. So in the community, I'm just wondering, what was and this is in A's words, by the way, what was the craziest, coolest, biggest thing you've ever seen someone create in Little Big Planet? What was something that got you thinking, how did they even make that?
You about that, Tom?
Well, it's going back, isn't it? Like, I will always remember when the calculator came out, the first full calculator in LBP1. That was on like Kotaku, and everything got picked up, and that was like a proper kind of milestone moment. And when all that, before we had logic boards, all the logic of LBP2 and all that jazz, people doing it the long way round was kind of special. I feel like I just need to permanently apologize for my brain. It's a long time ago.
It's all good.
15, 16 years ago.
I've mentioned it a lot already, but the Steve Big Gun's 50-year glitch, like he made an FPS in like a building with a helicopter crashing through a window and all this crazy stuff, and it was insane. Like, how on earth is this the Little Big Planet engine? It's like full 3D. That was in just amazing. John Beach's stuff, which we talked about that a little bit. He made all these incredible mechs that just were so detailed.
Right.
Tom's little brain working, trying to remember what the hell's going on back then.
Yeah.
Music stuff early on, people figured out how to you'd get on a little vehicle and it would drive along and it would go past all the notes and play the song.
Oh, you've got to hear this. You've got to hear this. Oh, I have to share this with you. Jim Noir, the guy who made my patch in that level in the savannah, he made those music levels all the time. And that was something no one ever knew. No one ever knew that Jim made music levels.
Oh, Jim.
I think we should divert from Little Big Planet just a little bit. Let's maybe talk about, say, for example, Sackboy Big Adventure. This might be a hard one. Do you guys think that Sackboy Big Adventure was a step in the right direction for Little Big Planet?
Is it a step in the right direction? Oh no, it's definitely a step in a direction, and it's definitely a fun game. But without play, create, share, is it truly Little Big Planet? That's what I say.
Yeah, I agree. It's a different game. It's Sackboy. I played that with my eldest son. Actually, really loved it. And it's fun, to see Sackboy again and in a totally different setting, and it's different.
Maybe it's the step in the right direction for Sackboy, but Little Big Planet has its own set of things it needs, I think, to continue onwards.
Yeah. No, that's completely fair. I respect that. What were your guys' opinions on so remember the yay and boo features? Do you think it was definitely a good idea to remove the boo button? Do you remember all the shenanigans that happened with that?
Yeah,
we fought hard for that. Maybe not that hard, but that was definitely something that we were involved with. We were like, what's the point?
It was upsetting. It was upsetting children. It was the visibility that was I think the main issue. I always saw it as in two parts, like having likes and yays and boos and making those numbers visible is kind of like just surfacing, people just seeing that other people don't like their content, which is what's the point, and that was just serves to make people feel bad. But if that data is being used in a way where if that is not visible and you have yays and boos and you can't see the numbers, and it's about figuring out what content you like as a user and use that for recommending other content to you, I think that's there's some benefits to that, but not exposing it. It doesn't, as a stat, it's just a bit mean.
Yeah, it didn't feel in spirit with the game to have boos. Having an absence of yays is the same, but way less cruel sounding. But that was part of the discoverability stuff we worked on. There was, I remember, a flow. When you finished a level, it forced you to rate it. And the default was 3 out of 5. And so every level was rated 3 out of 5 because people just wanted to press X and continue. And so we, wanted to try and get it, the rating would be optional, but also skippable. You don't need to rate everything. But then also, do you need to be able to rate between 1 and 5? Is just liking something enough? There are all these conversations that we had, like how can we determine quality content? How can we surface it for people? What do people need? And I think it's important to note that, it was kind of early days for social media then. Now something like a like button or whatever is just so prevalent and normal, right? I heart it or I like it. But, things then, I think it was confused. Wasn't there hearts as well? So there was heart that you could bookmark it, but it felt like a rating. And so we were like, that's silly. That's, if you heart something, you love it. Let's figure all this stuff out. We worked on all that with James and Alex and Jim and all those guys. I think LVP2 had a pretty good system, and I'm sure it got, got better over time. I don't know. You might have to tell me that. I don't know what the Dream system was like, but hopefully it was another level up from there.
Yeah. Speaking of Dreams, what are your guys' opinions on Dreams? Do you guys prefer Dreams or Little Big Planet's creation aspect?
Tom, you actually worked on Dreams for a little bit, right? I know, really did.
Yeah, right until launch. And it's a long tail development on Dreams.
Well, Little Big Planet's creation mode is always going to be special to us, I think, right? And whether we prefer it or not, we've spent so much time together in that create mode making silly vehicles or whatever what you were doing back in the day. I don't know.
Well, it's the main difference is that, you know, limitation, and Dreams is just like, it still blows my mind, the possibilities of creation within it. It is an incredible tool set. But the Little Big Planet is much more constrained with its options, but also the art style and the aesthetic is and the character of Sackboy, importantly, is kind of it's a winning combo. Going back to the GDC presentation of how creativity was just part of play and just in the embodiment of fun as well. That 4-player demo on the hill and going down the hill on the skateboard and all that. That was, you know, that's what drew so many people into Little Big Planet. I think it was fun actually hearing Kenny talk about that in his interview the other day. Talking about how that made him feel.
I was going to say, I think the difference between them feels like, you know, Lego to a pottery wheel. Both of those things are amazing, but they have different sort of usability, purpose, and skill levels required, and also the things you can make. Like, you're pretty limited with Lego sets in a way, but that limitation forces you to be creative in unexpected ways. You know, when you're given something like Dreams, you can create so much more. You can create absolutely anything, and I'm so glad that, you know, that project got to be made and was finished. You know, that is magnum opus. So I think both are just absolutely amazing, and love MM.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love MM too. And of course, with the other Little Big Planet games, specifically PS Vita and PSP, did you guys ever play those games? And if so, did you ever enjoy the community levels?
We definitely did. I remember the PS Vita one. We went to Tarjay. Did you come on that trip, Tom?
No.
That was one other. We would do these. It started with LBP 2, I want to say. We would have these sort of game jams at the studio where we would bring in maybe some Saki's winners or whoever it may be, from, you know, people from the community who we knew were really, really good creators, Steve Big Guns, you know, and then get them to play test the new tools and stuff. But yeah, we played those levels too. We played everything. It was part of it. You know, even though we didn't make those in-house, you know, they were part of the family. And we would try to find other people, you know, people from the community to work on them. You know, Steven Espel, you know, he was sort of pulled in to help with some of that stuff initially, to be like a community person, you know, for these other facets, I think. We would like seed these other companies with people we knew would continue the spirit of Little Big Planet. It was really hard getting other studios to work on stuff like that. Like the early DLCs, you know, everything was made in-house at MM, but then Sumo started helping, and it just took a little while for them to sort of think in the same way as the designers at MM. And so, like later on, it just became much easier to just go find people who are already good at this. You know, don't try and get your existing designers to become good at it. Or do that as well, but like do both of those things, and then they can learn from each other, and, you know, success will happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of playing levels, how many levels do you think you guys played in the community in total?
That is impossible to know, but loads, absolutely loads. I mean, part of my job was just playing levels all day.
Yeah, I've definitely not played as many levels. There's that thing with it's the thing with working in games. Like you start the job, and like I don't know. I definitely started at MM, and I was part of the LBB community, and then as time goes on and workload increases, like the desire to go home after work and then like carry on playing the game you've been looking at all day, kind of thing, is got harder for me. So I guess over time, I played fewer levels as it went on, but it's just the nature of the beast, I guess.
Just make those SingStar levels and the SingStar videos and stuff.
Yeah, I used to be a member of that community back in the day.
Oh goodness, yeah. Speaking of that too, like playing levels, I know there was this really annoying thing. There was an update early on after Little Big Planet 2's launch where it broke Sackboy's head turning functionality, and it took them around a week to fix. Do you guys remember that, and maybe why that happened?
No, I don't remember that. When was that? Do you know? What if it was before we started and we probably laughed about it?
Yeah, I don't remember that.
It's amazing though, once you do go behind the curtains, you're thinking, well, why on earth can't they fix this immediately? And then you go behind and you see all the things that have to be done in order for a sudden patch to go out, and all the millions of checks and balances and things that it has to go through and whatever. I'm sure that they fixed it immediately, but then you have to kick off this big long process of having people make sure the build isn't going to do more harm than good, and seed it out to all the places it has to get to.
Yeah. Alex mentioned the whole patching process with FARCs and maps and all that good stuff. And
we just leave that up to him. I'd be like, when is it hitting? I'll tell everybody about it, and then we'll give it a name like a cheese, and then we'll eat that cheese and be happy.
Yeah, that was the cheese. The cheese patches was so good. Like, yeah, that was one of the. Yeah, that was. I mean, it was a genius idea, but yeah, every time a new cheese patch came out, we'd get the cheese in. All stand around, get wine and beer and whatnot, and sit around having some nice cheese. Apart from that really buttery one that was like just eating butter.
That was Cornish Yarg.
I can't remember. Yeah, that always comes to mind.
And speaking of all the good memories that come with Little Big Planet, I want to know, do you guys think there should be maybe a new Little Big Planet entry? And do you think there will ever be a new Little Big Planet entry that has the create aspect and maybe even has backwards compatibility?
I mean, I'd love it. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I think I kind of tend to think of Little Big Planet or Sackboy a bit like Mario. It's an IP, and Sony and PlayStation will keep on, making the most of that IP and expanding that range of games. Is inevitable. But I can't think why they would have the Little Big Planet IP and not make the most of the core thing about that everyone loves, play, create, share. So I'm sure it will return at some point.
10 million levels, did you say? Like, that speaks to the popularity of it. If you build it and they will come.
Right.
That's what they say.
Right? Exactly. I don't know, maybe do you guys think there should be like a definitive Little Big Planet 4? Or maybe a Sackboy Big Adventure 2 or something else, another spin-off? What are your guys' opinions on that?
I mean, I want it as a fan who's now had enough distance from working on it. I'd be very, very happy to see it. An LBP4, I don't know what the evolution of it would be, but I'm sure it'd be something amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt the appetite is there for the fans, and I'd love to see it. I think when you start talking about backwards compatibility, it's creates a lot of headaches for a lot of people. But you can hope.
Right.
Absolutely. Some kind of vague backwards compatibility. I mean, it was always it's a game that is impossible to fully test. At no point can you guarantee that everything's going to work because there's infinite possibilities with creating stuff. The QA team at Media Market was always just like, how the hell do we test this? And they just have to do their best.
Yeah. Do you guys remember? Yeah. Do you guys remember about the QA stuff? Do you guys ever remember that early issue with the physics engine where if you had two things stacked on top of each other, it would kind of like intersect a little bit down, right? But then if you went and had a cup of tea and came back to the game, it all exploded like just this big mess. Do you guys remember that? Were you around for that?
I remember something about that. All these glitches and things, though, people would just have so much fun with them, and that was part of like, shall we fix this one or shall we leave this one? Is it more fun to have it in? I'm sure that one was fixed, though.
Yeah. What were some of the biggest glitches you guys saw aside from like the infinite layer, 50 layer glitch? What are some other notable ones?
Oh God, I can't even remember now. That's the one that sticks in my mind forever, though, because it was just a complete game changer, What else were people doing with glitches? So many good things.
Yeah.
There were definitely some weird materials glitches that could have like really strange quality materials. What are the other things? I'm sure we could look it up. You know this better than we do. You should tell us what they were.
So, I mean, what you mentioned about the materials, right? Like cardboard that was grabbable, stuff like that. Glass that wasn't slippery. People use those in creative ways.
Exactly. You'd find a way to make something from it. And so it wasn't, those are the kind of glitches. They weren't dangerous. They weren't messing anyone's game up. They were improving things, and they just showed us like, oh, I guess we should have made a grabbable cardboard or a non-slip glass in the first place.
Right. Do you remember anything? Do you guys remember anything about the this thing? Sorry. Take a while to build up the questions, but apologies.
No, you're good.
In Little Big Planet 2, there was this thing that happened where if someone joined you, you could pull out, and people made amazing costumes, by the way, like fantastic costumes. If you spent 90 hours working on a costume, you'd have someone join you and pull out a Sackbot and essentially go into the Sackbot and steal your costume right from you, like ripping candy from a baby. What were you guys' thoughts on that?
I remember that, and people were stealing DLC as well and things like that, somehow through that one. Or taking things from the game they shouldn't have. It's pretty crazy. I'm sure that's the kind of thing that probably should be fixed.
Anything that enables griefing in any way is kind of it's shut down, I guess.
Yeah, that reminds me about the good grief functionality. Do you guys remember anything like reviewing any of the grief reports that people made? Because I remember I used to make grief reports back in the early day when I was like a dumb kid. I was like, what's this good grief feature? And I would, snapshot something random in the level.
Well, yeah, the good grief feature connected, we kind of plugged into a service within Sony where it went straight into the moderation team. So we didn't have access to any of that actually. Although Spaff, did you had conversations with the teams and about higher profile things.
That was a very, very specialist team that had to be like certified and, really carefully controlled, because I hope this never happened with LVP, but there's a chance with something where you're enabling all photos to be uploaded, sounds, everything, that somebody might see something traumatic or, problematic, like extremely problematic. And so those teams that are the first bastion of, moderation control, they're pretty hardcore in the way that they're set up and looked after. So that stuff would probably go there first, and then to a lower level version of it where it's like, okay, we've made sure there's nothing crazy bad in here. You can moderate this. Big floppy donkey dick or whatever, that's fine.
So we never saw any of those reports that you sent.
Well, so a bit of unfortunate news. Steve and I, something happened with Steve. Don't tell anyone about this, but someone did exactly that and tagged A with those photos. He did not prompt anything, and Steve and I, believe it or not, had to ask A for the uncensored versions of those images.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh my God. It's so bad.
Right.
I'm glad it was hopefully figured out, though.
It was. And I'm curious, were you guys around in the early days when they had this friends and family beta that happened? Were you guys around for that at all? It was like with friends at PlayStation. And...
For Little Big Planet, no, that was just that's before us.
We did have the.
We were on the beta
copy. Yeah, I got a press copy like a week or two ahead. Also, it wasn't very far ahead. I was working at Eurogamer very briefly to dub them in. But I nicked off them. No, I didn't. But I had access to that through that, basically.
Interesting. How often? This is a very endearing question, but how often do you guys still think about Little Big Planet, maybe in your day-to-day lives?
How often do we think about Little Big Planet? Well, I see, look over here. Who's this?
Hey.
Who's this little friend of mine that's hanging out?
Oh, wonderful.
Got a little button on him, man. Little thing. I don't know. All over my house are little reminders of, I held up that little card. I genuinely did just find that earlier while I wasn't looking for it. And so I think about it, more often than you think, I guess. And the things we did there come up as well, like they'll inspire things we do in our job now, or that, I don't know, maybe you play it with your kids, Tom, instead of playing Sackboy with.
Well, yeah, I think in more recent years, I've come to enjoy it all over again because of my kids. So it's the reason I still have a physical PS3 console, so I can play with my game saves. So I can play LBP and LBP2 on the original devices I did back then. I've had some fun. With my son playing through those levels, and the kids can see their mum in the intro. It's nice. It's nice. So it has kind of opened up. Being a parent and having kids has opened up, a new angle to the game, to the games, and it's nice to be able to enjoy it all again.
Yeah, and you maybe think like a new Little Big Planet title would reignite that, because eventually, right, LBP 1, 2, and 3 are going to pass with time. They're gonna, kind of fall to the dust a little bit because new consoles are gonna keep coming out and new platforms. Yeah. So a new entry, to be able to continue that generational cycle, because it really is. Yeah. And it's crazy when you think about that. And speaking of like levels again, I want to know what was the most, because I know you guys mentioned ramp, but what was the most popular level with real-time players on it that you guys ever saw in the community? You know, with a little white bubble that had the player count on it.
Oh man, yeah.
Most popular. I mean, honestly, they were probably the Shark or Bomb Survivor ones. The number of people playing those, phenomenal. Like, what? Crazy that they would be the focus.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And let's see. So continuing in the community a little bit, was there anything maybe? Because we mentioned like big and impressive and super cool, but instead of that, was there anything in the community that you just vividly remember seeing that just touched your heart, you know, that just made you smile a lot?
All the time. All the time. Just, you know.
Well, we had a really lovely wall of artwork that fans would send in, and it was in the the one I'm thinking of was in the tea area, tea point in the office. And so quite often you just be making a cup of tea and turn around and read one of those messages that someone's written and sent in and it's been put up on the board. And some of those messages are so heartfelt. It was always like a really lovely kind of resource to to kind of immerse yourself in now and then. But there were lots of stories from in the game as well. Like most famously, the wedding. You know, that first kind of wedding that happened in LPP was really, really lovely. But yeah. Sorry, it's back. What were you going to say?
No, I'm just agreeing with you. Yeah. Stories from people that played it, you know, that they would tell us in person were always just. I remember this one, like a parent who said that their kid had, you know, was on the spectrum, had some form of autism, and found it hard to convey their emotions, and they were in, you know, hospital with them at some point, trying to figure out, you know, how they felt. Were they happy, sad? What you know? They were just finding it really hard to communicate, and the kids started like pointing and in different directions, and they figured out what they were doing is using the D-pad to convey up, you know, I'm happy, or, you know, I'm scared, and they were pointing in the direction, and so they were using the Sackboy emotions to convey their emotions to their mum, which is, you know, things like that are not intended, you know, when you're building a game, but when you hear about them, they're always just, you know, just feels crazy. It's so special and just wonderful. And we'd hear things like that, not all the time, but quite a lot of the time. There'd be something like that where it touched people's heart. They got married in the game, like you said, Tom, or, you know, met somebody in the game that they then got married to. And so many people have gone on to do amazing things as well. And that's another reason why I think it would be lovely to have more Little Big Planet. It's obviously inspired people to, you know, find things that they might not have otherwise found, whether that's games, directly working in games, right? There's so many people who can point to that now. There's, you know, yourself, you've got a crew of people who are, you know, figuring out how to, you know, hack things and reverse engineer things to get levels working, but it's developing a skill in you. Austin and Daniel, who made the Little Big podcast, gone on to win Emmys for, you know, working on a documentary series. You know, there's people that are just doing all these crazy things, and, you know, I bump into them all the time, and it's wonderful. And just tell me about them.
Yeah, it's an amazing game. It's changed lives. I mean, you're absolutely right. For me especially, it actually led me into my very first official game developer contract position. It was the best job I ever had. Worked as a game developer for a year and a half, and it was just like being at MM, where you have these mad, crazy people trying to figure out how to put this thing together. And sometimes you throw things at the wall and they work, and other times you throw things and they don't stick. And you're just all going in the same direction. And that was a truly special moment. And I think without Little Big Planet, me and a lot of other people, especially developers, programmers, and things like that, wouldn't have what they have now without this one game. It's just insane to think about. And the little things, the little trinkets that you guys keep from the game, right, that you remind yourself of. I want to know, especially you, Splaff, and of course you, Tom, do you still remember like having any like crazy Little Big Planet merch that you received where you were just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is a great piece of merch. I'm going to hold on to this forever.
Well, one piece of merch that I've held on for this long is this T-shirt, which we made for have T-shirts that stand out at events, stuff for community meetups. There was always a thing with Sackboy and merch, where like, there were a lot of plushies of Sackboy, and a lot of them didn't quite get the aesthetic right. You know, they didn't. A lot of them ended up looking a little bit funky, which is something to be said. It's a shame that I don't. Did they ever really get like a really good Sackboy plushie?
This one is the first one that I remember being good. It's pretty good. Like this was from
pretty good.
I think it's from when we made those T-shirts, Tom. I think it's from PAX.
Oh yeah,
PAX.
Oh yeah, the PAX Expo. About that Sackboy plushie. I need to know. Siobhan had that giant one in the studio.
Yeah.
Do you know where that is now? Do you happen to know? Like, were there any giant versions of those plushie made?
There was a costume that was what's the German Games Expo? I can't remember.
Gamescom.
Gamescom. Yeah, there was someone walking around in a Sackboy outfit, like a huge.
Looking around me like I'm going to have stuff. Yeah. I did find this. A Little Big Book.
Oh yeah, I've got mine as well. Yeah.
Have you seen this?
I haven't.
Rex put it together. It's all like early days of Media Molecule. It was just made for internal use. It's got loads of like concept art and
no
cool
way.
stuff like that in it.
Wait,
very cool.
Do they have that for like for sale at all? Like could you send A1 or something like that? Are there any laying around that you guys have?
Or pictures.
Oh, goodness.
This was just made for...
Scan it in.
Scan all thing. I mean, Rex might have the files. It was made for it's some birthday, some like second birthday of MM or something.
Wow.
I don't remember now, but it's lovely. So I've got that, and that feels special.
Oh, goodness.
And, all manner of hand-drawn Rex like badges and shirts and nonsense, doodles, and
we used to have
a stack of post-it notes.
We used to have a badge maker, a pin maker in the office, didn't we? So when we went to community events, we used to kind of remake the pins that you get in the game. Not like the patchwork pins, like level badges and things. We used to make them for events and give them out and stuff. That was fun.
I would also get a sheet of circles and give it to Rex, and he would draw a little Big Planet doodles in all of them, and then we just make them into complete one-off little badges, buttons, whatever, pins, whatever they are.
Yeah, the pins. But not the game pins from LBD2. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Kiss and Mr. Spaff, I've got one more thing for both of you. Which is better, Coke or Pepsi?
How are you going to answer that, Tom?
Well, I mean, I rarely drink either of these drinks, but if I do, it's gonna be Coke with rum, probably.
Yeah. There used to be a huge billboard for Coke in San Francisco that was really beautiful. It was all made of like shimmering sort of, what do you call them? I don't know. But in the wind, it would blow and shimmer. And it was there for a long, long time. So I'm going to go with Coke simply because I love the graphic design element of that one more. And that banner means something to me.
Well, that was Tom and Spaff, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it was an absolute pleasure having both of you on for a double interview, double trouble. It was wonderful, and being able to have you guys share your insights into what it was like being the original community managers for such a beloved game and a beloved franchise and community. It's been very insightful for a lot of people in our audience, I think, and for me as well. I've learned some new things. And so, it's been a great time. And stay tuned, guys, because we'll be having more interviews be posted on the channel in the next few coming weeks. And just a word of encouragement to you all out there who are watching to keep Little Big Planet in your hearts. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Peace.